Hey everyone, happy it's a Wednesday today. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Well, I'll kind of jump into it today. I wanted to talk about um, again breaking points who just consistently seems to want to put out fake news. And I don't know why they continue to do this when the internet exists, and you can easily look up any of this stuff. Um, but I will say before I dive into it, um, Emily on Breaking Points um, tries to come with the facts whenever she's making a point. Um, so she tends to read from the bottom line and then forms her opinions. Some of those opinions I agree with, some of them I do not. But at least she makes the effort to leverage facts that are available and then present those facts. In this case, she does the same thing. Um, but then there's Ryan and Crystal. Um, and I find this even more with Ryan. And I will say Ryan has a tell when he knows he's wrong, but he's trying to spin. He has I would say, a way in which he speaks, which tends to be very verbose, generally speaking, but he tends to have a lot of mental stutters. And so those mental stutters jump up dramatically when he's lying. That is his tell. And in this particular case, you'll see it a lot more. Um, it's just obvious that he is pulling stuff out of his you know where or as you know what, and just trying to make things up, which is why I think Emily just leverages the facts. Again, I don't really. She could have countered Ryan's point and said she just kind of talked specifically about the cases, but at any rate, I'll let this portion of the video speak for itself.
Um, this is outside somebody's home in Minnesota, pulling out a guy with a beard from a Signal chat who's like doing um, help organizing against the immigration crackdown
This is Isaac Almond's sound
in Minnesota. Um, this comes after. We could put up D5. This comes after three protesters in Washington State were found guilty of conspiracy to protest, basically related to protests against immigration facility out in Washington State, and also comes after the eight federal indictments were handed down in Michigan against encampment protesters there. So that's not immigration. Those are the encampment protesters. We covered those on Friday. So this, as Ken Klippenstein has been very heavily focused on NPSM 7.
He broke the news of it,
right? Which is this security memo, National Security Presidential Memo 7, which the subject of it is straightforward: countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence, and it directed federal prosecutors to try to roll up left-wing groups, more or less, that are organizing these protests. So tell us about the indictment, because you were telling me before we started that you think that they actually do have a case here against some of these protesters.
I think they have a case against some of them. And so just to be very clear, this is going to be overly broad. I don't doubt that 1 second. This is not in any way an endorsement of the administration's.
No, I'll just stop it there. She goes into the charges, but I like the way that Ryan frames that. Yeah, I've understand they've gotten some charges, and you're gonna read those charges. Yes. Just to be clear, it is not a crime to protest, and none of these people are being charged with protesting. What they are being charged with, and again, I can easily just pull this up. They're being charged with, all of them are being charged with conspiracy. So there's Isaac Amon Saint or Sant, who was mentioned. the bearded guy that was pulling out a random bearded guy. Uh, conspiracy. um, Emmett James Doyle, Cameron Kennedy, Colum Robinette, Davis, Brian Stillwell, Appland. Then we get into Kyle Wagner, who's charged with conspiracy and solicitation to commit a crime of violence, interstate threats as well. There's William Morgan, conspiracy, internet stalking, assault on a federal officer, destruction of government property, which is like kicking a vehicle. Natasha Rockets. I want to brutalize that name. Conspiracy, assault on a federal officer. Um, Hannah Margaret Vanderwater Davis. She needs to change her last name. Conspiracy. She has a planning role. All of these people are charged with conspiracy because they got together and planned how to obstruct the federal government. It wasn't that they just randomly showed up at an event and decided to do all this stuff. If you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. If you want to just randomly show up at an ICE facility and block the front gates, you could do that. I don't agree with it, but you can do that. It's probably not the best move. You're going to get hit with probably a smoke bomb of some kind or a tear gas, or not a great idea, but you can do that. But if you plan with others to obstruct federal agents, that is the definition of conspiracy. That is not just a made up crime. I mean, this absolutely ridiculous. This was covered. The protests were covered. I'll just play part of this video.
Protesters, excuse me, it is hard to breathe with that irritant in the air. This group is still holding their ground at this exit, but obviously agents, law enforcement, they've come into the crowd, and now there is some sort of standoff, some sort of commotion. It looks like they've got a gentleman with his hands behind his back. We really are in the thick of it right now, so we really don't know exactly what happened. Joel Cam has been trying to capture and run ahead and capture it all, but obviously there's a gentleman here in handcuffs who was in the crowd. Not sure where they're taking this gentleman with handcuffs. We're going to have to investigate a little bit more, talk to folks who maybe witnessed what exactly happened to lead up to this point. But this is, emotions are high and tensions are escalating. Up until the last, half hour, things have remained really peaceful. But, now with law enforcement present within the last half hour, there have been moments where things are high. And Joel, if you turn around, there's another gentleman, more going on behind us. Irritant continuing to be sprayed. And Heather, I want to apologize too. I know there's expletives being thrown around. That's just something unavoidable.
I could go on and on and on with the video. In this one, what you see is the daytime protests, which have instigators within the crowd that are being targeted by the police to pull out. So these are people that are say, I should say, agitators. These are people that are throwing objects at federal agents, trying to get the reaction to then get the crowd riled up. And that's why they're doing targeted pulls from these protests that are happening. While again, during the day, there are people out protesting and they're, holding their signs and feeling like they're changing the world when really they're doing nothing. Uh, and within those groups, you have a handful of people that are agitators, and those agitators are being targeted by federal law enforcement and being pulled out of the crowd. And you have this reporter saying, "I don't know what they did," and blah blah blah. Like, lady, come on, like, get with it. But there was days of protesters outside of this particular ICE facility, especially after the shooting of I think it was the Alex Preddy shooting. It could have been the first one or the second one. I'm sure it was probably both of them. Um, but then there were also people that were assaulted by the peaceful protesters, like Savannah Hernandez of TPUSA, who was just in the crowd. And she's a tiny woman getting assaulted by the peaceful protesters in the crowd. At night, the videos that came out showed basically black-clad individuals, large numbers of black-clad individuals wearing protective gear, essentially riot gear, and gas masks, uh, having interactions with the police. They were assaulting officers and they were doing all this stuff. And so I just find it hysterical that Ryan sits over here and acts like nothing's going on, nothing's going on. Like nobody, I don't understand like why these people are just being like, yeah, go ahead and read the charges. I'm sure they're all fake. Get the F out of here. I can't with any of this stuff. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And again, these people will have their day in court. Um, and if they're found guilty, they're found guilty. If they're not, they're not. But the reality is that there are large numbers of people that tend to come out at night that are assaulting federal officers, ICE, DHS, assaulting police in those specific areas where they're actually trying to help crowd enforcement. Um, very few places are doing that most of the time, which is why you have these interactions, by the way. Local police is not engaged. They're not trying to help out and create a protective perimeter. But I'll leave it on this one.
Stress to the ICE agents. It's like,
That's silly.
that's not a crime. Sorry that you're.
So did Will Stancil.
Yes, causing emotional distress. I'm sure they'd love to arrest Will Stancil. But the counter argument would be, prove that you are lawfully carrying out your duties. Because what we see as a free people is a bunch of goons going around and snatching brown people off the street without asking them questions, grabbing them and then putting them in vans and driving off. And then finding out later whether or not they are citizens, whether or not they're legal residents, whether they have asylum cases that are processing, or whether they're here completely illegally. They are grabbing first and then often then just dumping them somewhere else when they find out that they are here legally. And so that would be the counter argument. Say, if you really are carrying out lawful duties, you have to actually prove that. You have to demonstrate that to us, because otherwise we are a free citizenry.
So two claims in there. One is that ICE and DHS are not acting within their lawful duties based on federal laws that are out there, and the other is that they're just snatching up brown people. So interesting, I will say, Ryan's argument is the same exact argument that I think it was Scott Kelly and a few other Democrats made in regard to military officers, saying you don't have to carry out unlawful orders. Like, what is that? This is just a pretext to essentially allow people to just disregard the federal government. One, on the Scott Kelly one, it's like, bruh, these people at the ground level are not going to be like out there on the out there in the battlefield going, is this, I'm concerned about whether or not this is like, no, nobody's doing that. And that creates a lot of confusion and that creates a lot of issues. In this case, Ryan is describing it as, well, these people are allowed to do all of the things that they're doing because they believe that what ICE and DHS are doing is unjustified and unlawful. And oh, by the way, they're just snatching up random brown people for no reason at all. And like nothing. Again, Ryan is preaching to an audience that clearly doesn't have the internet or can't just do some basic research. Like, no, the claim is not true. It's misleading and exaggerated. And I'll just go down to the bottom. The claim frames lawful, if aggressive, immigration enforcement as random racist kidnapping. That's rhetoric, not reality. ICE operates targeted unlawful presence, which disproportionately affects certain demographics of of geographic policy reasons, not brown people for no reason. Mistakes, overreach, and optics problems exist in high volume ops, as with any policy surge, but the core claim doesn't hold. You can't just, I mean, Ryan can go on and say whatever he wants, but Ryan can't say that he is a reporter or he is an investigative journalist if he's just spewing complete and utter BS. Like, this is the kind of stuff that annoys me because I go out in like the wild and people will just cite this stuff. They'll just say these things because they listen to people like Ryan and other like politicians essentially and activists just say these things without actually backing it up with any proof. Like they just will it into existence via saying it. And this is a free country. You have the right to say whatever you want, but you also are wrong. And like the fact that like a Breaking Points considers itself a news organization with this kind of BS coming out of it, like how do you take them seriously? Like this is my number one complaint about most news that's out there, and ultimately why I have to do the research all the time on subjects is because of situations like this where you have people just making blatant statements and like saying very incendiary things in which they then provide no actual information on, but they just say it and they're considered a trusted news source. So you just take it as truth and verbatim. And then you then go out in the public and you just recite this stuff like an NPC. Like, you, it's just absolutely annoying. It's absolutely annoying. And I will continue to like hammer breaking points. And especially, I would say even more so Emily, because she does not push back on any of this stuff that Ryan says. Like, it's fine to go to the core claim, right? Which is the segment is about the actual cases and the talk, like to actually cite the specific cases. That stuff is available and anybody can have access to it. Again, I'm just using AI to summarize it, but I can easily go and then pull up the actual documents themselves and go over that. There are other channels that are much better at doing the legal analysis. Robert Gavea, by the way, is probably one of the best out there. Viva Fry used to be one of the best, but Robert Gavea, if you're not watching his channel, please do. It's phenomenal. Um, but the the incendiary claims are never addressed, and Emily just whitewashes right over it. She's like, it's like he doesn't even say it and just kind of like moves on. Like this stuff needs to be debated because the audience watching is taking what Ryan is saying as the gospel and it's actually factual because there's no challenge to it. It's just assumed to be true, and it is not. Again, anybody with $5 in their pocket and an internet connection can go and pull this stuff up. Again, I it's not that I want to spend a lot of time covering the BS that's coming out of Breaking Points, and this is just one article amongst many, or one segment amongst many that they're talking about today. Another one was the Iran deal, which, by the way, even I think to this very minute, it's 3 o'clock on Wednesday Eastern Standard Time, or 3:04 Eastern Standard Time when I'm making this video. And the actual document for the memorandum of understanding for the Iran initial deal has not been publicized. And yet everybody is going on breathlessly citing sources that are talking about it, and they're leveraging those sources as the truth to then report as if everything that those sources is saying is fact when the actual details have not been released by the administration. When they get released by the administration, not just a verbal readout, but the actual documents itself, or the many pages of documents that were digitally signed, there's nothing to report on. It's literally all just made up, and it's leveraging other people's credibility to then launder those as facts when there's no underlying evidence to the claims that are being made that are coming out of the administration. Again, I just find this stuff super annoying. And it's ultimately, I mentioned this in another video, the reason why I became kind of radicalized uh, as far as it comes to like the news is because I was an avid MSNBC watcher at the time in 2015, leading up to the 2016 election. And I saw the dramatic shift in the way that MSNBC started to cover a president. It wasn't, again, I woke up every single morning watching the Today Show. And then for my news, I would watch the NBC or NBC Nightly News. I would watch MSNBC to get my regular news updates, but it became very obvious after the election that the people within these news organizations lost their mind and suffered from some level of Trump derangement syndrome early on and immediately flipped to making stuff up. And I saw this in real time because of the Charlottesville protests, which I was watching MSNBC at the time. I was watching their live coverage of Trump's speech and the fine people on both sides speech. And then I saw the 5 o'clock news coverage coming out of these places saying that Trump said there were fine people on both sides. And it was 100% not true. And I'm not talking about the white supremacists and the neo Nazis. They should totally be condemned. And then I saw them do that time and time and time again. After the Charlottesville, I was like, I have to just watch his speeches or whenever he's talking because the news is clearly spinning and reframing what he's saying to an audience that isn't going to actually go out and watch the video or do any additional research. And so then I had to start doing research. And that's ultimately how I ended up in this seat today with my limited followers and making videos and ranting to the ether out there. But like people, Breaking Points is publishing or putting out fake news. They can say whatever they want to, right? They have the right to do that in the United States of America. It's freedom of speech. But they're also wrong. And they're wrong a lot. And they're constantly putting out things, reports that are based on anonymous leaks and anonymous reporting or reporting from other organizations, and then they're laundering it as if it is true without any of those facts being disclosed from the current administration. And that could be whether it's the Biden administration, whether it was the first Trump administration and now the second Trump administration. They're consistently doing this. And Breaking Points isn't the only one. TYT does it. In like every single like left wing talking head does this, which is like letting someone else manufacture the news and then they then report on that as if it is fact when there is no underlying evidence to support that. Suckers and losers, fake. I could go down a list of things. I mean, even January 6th, the speech, marched peacefully and patriotically. Never said to go riot. Never said any of that stuff. But you could talk to random people out there and Trump instigated the protest by telling people to go over there and, take back the power by any means necessary. That is not what he said at all. Again, I watched the speech live. But at any rate, I hope everybody has a wonderful Wednesday. I'm going to continue to call it Breaking Points, as long as they're going to continue to put out fake news, especially from Ryan. I mean, I'm just like, I can't with Ryan. I can't with Crystal. Emily, if you ever watch this video, please, for the love of God, like give some pushback. Sagar, grow a freaking spine, buddy. Like, oh my God. But as always, keep hoping the best for America is still ahead. Peace out.